If you're into laptops, I believe you've heard of the Surface laptop from Microsoft. This here is the latest edition, the Surface Laptop 3, the 15-inch model with the AMD Ryzen chip inside. Now a little bit of a backstory. My personal daily driver is actually a Surface laptop, the first generation, the one with the 7th gen Intel chips. And even to today, it's been a great experience, especially the typing experience. But for the past couple of weeks, I've been using the Surface Laptop 3, and I've got to say, the experience was not as stellar as I would have hoped it to be, but it was certainly interesting. But first, let's get the specs out of the way. This unit right here is running the Ryzen 5 3580U, 16GB of RAM along with 256GB SSD. If you want something a little more powerful, you can also opt for the higher-end Ryzen 7 3780U that comes with a more capable RX Vega 11 graphics as well. First up, let's start with the good. The build quality is excellent. The Surface Laptop 3 is made up entirely out of aluminum and it feels great. It's premium to the touch, and thanks to the smooth matte finish, it doesn't get as much fingerprints as compared to, say, a Razer Blade. Like I said, the build quality is just great, and it's been that way since the first generation of the Surface Laptop. For the display, we get a 15-inch IPS display with an aspect ratio of 3:2. It's also fully touch capable and does in fact support the Surface Pen should you want to use that. It's a fantastic display. It's got nice and vibrant colors, pretty deep blacks and good viewing angles. Watching content or playing games on this, you definitely won't be disappointed. You do of course get a 720p webcam with support for Windows Hello, which I still believe is the best way to unlock your laptop. You do get a new option for the keyboard deck, which is basically the same aluminum as the rest of the body instead of the familiar Alcantara fabric. And to note, only the 13.5-inch Surface Laptop 3 will have the option to choose the Alcantara fabric as a finish. For the 15-inch version, you only get the metal keyboard deck. The keyboard itself provides a really nice and comfortable typing experience. The keys themselves are nice and tactile and does require a little bit of force to press, which I personally like. And it's the typing experience that made me buy the original Surface Laptop in the first place. Moving down, we have the trackpad, which has been improved since the last generation. It's now slightly larger, which is nice considering the larger form factor, and as for its performance, I would say it's right up there with that of the Razer Blade, only to be bested by the MacBook Pro. But safe to say, without a doubt, if you're looking for a great trackpad experience for a Windows laptop, this here is probably one of the best, if not the best. For the Surface Laptop 3, they have also upgraded the speakers, which does support Dolby Audio Premium. It does sound great, with a little bit more kick on the low end, and overall, I would say that it's one of the better speakers out there for a Windows laptop. For ports, you get the Surface Connect on the right, which I actually do like because it's magnetic. And on the left, you get a standard USB, a USB-C port, which unfortunately does not support Thunderbolt 3, and last but not least, your headphone jack. For a 15-inch device, it's relatively light on ports. For me, I would like to see an SD card reader and perhaps another USB-C port, but one that supports Thunderbolt 3. One interesting feature that Microsoft touts with the Surface Laptop 3 is the ability to swap out the drive. It's an uncommon form factor, but given that you can actually do that, that's still pretty neat. And as for the speed of the included drive, it's not too bad with overall good read and write speeds. So now, we come to performance, and it's where the Surface Laptop 3 slightly falls short, but yet still remains quite interesting. As mentioned at the start, this laptop is powered by the AMD Ryzen 5 3580U, which runs on the Zen Plus architecture. Now the first thing that you will lose out on as compared to the Intel 10th gen chips is support for Wi-Fi 6. Now granted, I believe for most of you out there, especially for the average consumer, you wouldn't notice the difference between Wi-Fi 5 and Wi-Fi 6. But given that the entire infrastructure of our society is moving towards Wi-Fi 6 and that laptops nowadays are coming with support for Wi-Fi 6, that means that when you get this laptop, you are already on the losing end. The second thing to touch on is the performance of the chip itself. Now, I've seen other reviews out there, and I believe that the general consensus is that it's not as powerful as the Intel Ice Lake variant. But given my workload and given the things that I do and the tests that I put this laptop through, it's actually kind of interesting. Running Cinebench R20, the laptop scored 1537 on the multi-thread multi-core test and 357 on the single-thread single-core test. Comparing this with my previous review of the Asus UX434 with the Intel Core i7-8565U, the performance is rather similar. Now if you're like us and you're into video editing and you're using DaVinci Resolve, the results might surprise you. Our standard 10-minute 1080p edit took 23 minutes and 20 seconds to complete, while the 15-minute 4K edit took 57 minutes and 33 seconds to complete. Compare that to our previous results with the Intel Core i7-8565U on the Asus UX434. The render times are actually noticeably faster. Now perhaps DaVinci Resolve is running better on AMD hardware, and I guess that's kind of true given that the new MacBook Pros are running AMD hardware as well. So in that sense, I would suspect that DaVinci Resolve is much more better optimized for AMD hardware compared to, say, Adobe. With that said, however, scrubbing through timeline will still chug and playback in 4K will still drop frames, so do take note. Now if you're talking about gaming, the Vega 9 graphics in these Ryzen 5 chips does a pretty decent job. Games like CSGO will run comfortably over 60 frames per second at 1080p, and you can even technically run the game at the laptop's native resolution and still get playable frame rates of around 45 frames per second. If you're into Dota 2, you can also get a decent experience at 1080p high settings, which will net you around 40 frames per second. If you're talking about games like PUBG, however, it will struggle, with 1080p medium getting you roughly 20 frames per second, and even after dropping down to 720p, it's still less than 30 frames per second. In short, it will definitely handle light titles relatively well, but if you are throwing anything AAA or just more graphically intensive, you might just not want to play those titles at all. The third and last thing to mention is battery life. Battery life on this AMD powered Surface Laptop 3 is not that fantastic. Using it on a better battery setting, along with keeping the brightness at 50% with the backlit keyboard off, I've only managed to squeeze about 6 hours and 3 minutes on a single charge. Now granted, I do not have an Intel-based Surface Laptop 3 to compare my results with, but comparing to my previous result with the Asus UX434 featuring the 8th gen chips, that lasted me well over 8 hours, and even my first generation Surface laptop lasted me roughly the same amount of time, 8 hours. So it's kind of disappointing. With that said, I wouldn't say that 6 hours is bad. You can still technically get by through a day without your power break, but Microsoft did not change the battery size between the 13.5 inch and this 15 inch model. So personally, I would like to see a bigger battery with the 15 inch laptop. To sum up, the Surface Laptop 3 is a really well built device with a minimalistic design and a great user experience. But if you're looking for something I would say a little bit more versatile and maybe slightly more performance, you might want to take the Intel based Surface Laptop 3 instead. But with that said, if all you're doing is just general productivity and perhaps a little bit of light gaming, this Surface Laptop 3 with the Ryzen chip will suit your needs just fine. And especially if you have been waiting for a bigger version of the Surface Laptop 3, well, it's finally here. So that's it, those are my thoughts. Drop us a comment if you have any questions down below, subscribe to us if you haven't, follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Till the next one, see ya.